Donetsk region near the village of Sperna in the Rubezh Brigade's area of responsibility. For the attack, the Russians used heavy armored vehicles, 2 tanks, and 2 armored personnel carriers carrying infantry. A Ukrainian reconnaissance drone detected their movement and transmitted the coordinates to the Ukrainian mortar crew, which fired at the enemy convoy. Kamikaze drone operators also took off to attack the battlefield. When the Ukrainian drone pilot hit the first tank, the Russians immediately stopped and began to run towards the armored personnel carrier. While all this was going on, Ukrainian artillery attacked the Russian APC. Having lost their armored vehicles, the Russians were helpless in the middle of the field. They tried to run quickly across the open field, but by that time, Ukrainian bomber drones had already arrived on the battlefield. The commander of the UAV crew of the 4th Rubezh Operational Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine. Our brigade is currently defending in 3 sectors: Seversk, Lyman, and Pokrovsk. We confidently hold our positions and do not allow the Russians to cross our legitimate defense lines. The situation remains tense. Russian troops are constantly trying to storm us. Recently, for the first time in a long time, they launched an attack involving a certain amount of equipment and personnel. The entire group was destroyed, Ochanash stressed. According to him, the Russians are now mainly relying on motorcycle attacks. Over the past 6 months, the Russian invaders have slightly changed their attack tactics. The Russians tried to suppress our firepower in positions where our pilots were operating and used motorcycles to break through as deep as possible, creating a kind of lightning strike. The idea was to bypass the front line, secure the rear, and then expand the foothold. In most cases, this tactic did not work. Basically, they surrounded themselves. They entered our positions, got into a kind of ring, and were destroyed there. But because it happened quickly with motorcycles, the enemy sometimes managed to advance in a certain direction, the commander said. Kamikaze drone pilots and artillery crews continued to destroy damaged Russian equipment. Also in the Donetsk region, near the village of Tarasivka, a Russian armored column advanced to attack, but was spotted in time by a reconnaissance drone. As the Russians tried to break through to the front line, Ukrainian artillery began firing at them with great precision. The armored personnel carriers carrying infantry were the first to be destroyed. After that, the kamikaze drones arrived at the enemy column and began their attack. The Russian mechanized column was successfully broken and destroyed. This was a Russian raid in the Rubezh Brigade's area of responsibility, and it happened on June 5th. The reconnaissance drone pilots spotted 2 Russian armored personnel carriers parked near a tree line. Wasting no time, the pilots began to attack the enemy vehicles. Realizing that they were being hunted, the Russians ignited their vehicles and tried to escape, but it was too late. The Rubezh pilots coordinated their efforts and refused to let the enemy equipment go until it was completely destroyed. The 2nd armored personnel carrier, which failed to ignite, was also successfully destroyed by kamikaze drone pilots. This was a Russian MTLB, also abandoned. When the Russians landed, they forgot to close the hatch, making it easy for the Ukrainian pilots to destroy it with a direct hit from the termite drone. The burning of the enemy equipment was successful. The Russian ammunition depot was also discovered by the Magyar drone pilots, which was located in an occupied village inside a private house. The kamikaze drone pilots aimed and delivered a precise strike, destroying the enemy depot. This is also the result of the work of the Magyar drone pilots in the Donetsk region. This footage is 2 months old, but shows a professionally executed operation to eliminate the enemy. The Ukrainian Army's elite 92nd Assault Brigade thwarted a potentially powerful Russian assault along Ukraine's northern border with Russia last week, and knocked out an entire company of increasingly rare armored vehicles in the process. The successful defense by one of the Ukrainian Army's best brigades comes amid discontent in another elite Ukrainian brigade holding the line along the same stretch of the 1,100-kilometer front line. Ukrainian forces excel on the defense, but some critics insist the Ukrainians shouldn't be attacking while they're struggling to fully staff their infantry battalions. On or just before Thursday, the 92nd Assault Brigade's drones detected a large Russian force on the move outside the village of Zhuravlyovka in Russia's Belgorod Oblast, just opposite the border with Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast. The enemy, using armored vehicles and a significant number of personnel on motorcycles and all-terrain vehicles, decided to stage another meat assault. The brigade, which began the war as a vehicle-heavy mechanized brigade but reorganized to emphasize its infantry firepower, reported on social media. The 92nd Assault Brigade laid waste to the gathering Russian forces. The equipment and personnel were blown up by mines, hit by artillery, and hotly burned by drones of various types, the brigade claimed. Analysts counted around 10 knocked-out BMP fighting vehicles and tanks, which is a lot of BMPs and tanks at this late stage of the wider war.